Nathalie Simper, and this is The Limitless Musician, a podcast by KE Creative. Our team helps modern musicians find modern solutions to building a sustainable music career. Along with my co-host, Dr. Catherine Eminent, we will help you learn what it takes to build a career that enhances your life instead of restricting it by becoming the limitless musician you are meant to be. Hey friend, we've got Grim in the studio today, and if you're watching on YouTube, you can see two of his paws just poking into camera view over here in the corner. It's a beautiful day outside. The weather is finally starting to cool off, and I'm genuinely hyped up to get this episode recorded because it is just something that I'm really passionate about, something that I found really interesting while I was trying to put all the information together for the episode. So yeah, I guess I'm that person that's going to say I am really excited to record this episode today, even though that goes against everything I am usually because public speaking terrifies me. But I am just really excited to share this episode with you today. The overall theme of this season so far has been embracing authenticity in personal and professional spaces. And it can feel a lot easier to do that in one area of your life versus another. As a musician, so much of your identity is connected to your professional craft. So sometimes the desire to present a perfectly polished version of yourself bleeds into your personal life. Are you that kind of person who can't have a hobby and only do things so? I know I am. I have to be perfect at everything that I do. And it's a problem, and I'm working on it. But alongside of that comes the self-doubt, the frustrations about not always having the answers or being the absolute best, and also taming certain aspects of your natural personality, even when you're outside of those professional spaces. If you've been struggling to find a way to be your authentic self and also feel like your authentic self is showing up in professional ways, then this episode is going to break down why it feels like you can't be your true self and your professional self at the same time, why musicians tend to struggle more than others to fit in, and how to create an environment that helps the real you thrive instead of just survive. Now, myself, I am a natural compartmentalizer, so I am totally guilty of experiencing this tug of war throughout my life. There used to be really distinct barriers between the different versions of myself. The teacher Nathalie, performer Nathalie, weekend Nathalie, and family Nathalie, and all the other versions were all completely different people who rarely overlapped or showed themselves outside of their normal functions. I genuinely thought that talking about my baking hobby or showing dog pics to my fellow freelancers would be seen as unprofessional, and even worse, that they might be able to use this information to make judgments that would ultimately cost me regular gigs in these circles. Now, a lot of that had to do with my specific upbringing and life experiences, but think about how you've shown up in orchestra rehearsals, church gigs, for students, and for any other work that you've done as a musician. Especially when you're the new kid in the group, it's easy to want to blend in, see how everyone reacts, and take your cues based on that information. At least it always seems to be easier to go with the established flow, even if it means downplaying your personality, interests, and own opinions. So let's dive into the psychology of that. The human need to fit in and belong is deeply rooted in survival instincts. As you learn from the world and how it works around you, you then can understand how to have basic needs met and improve your chances of survival. There are recent studies by Harvard University and in the journal School Mental Health about the intrinsic need to fit in and how your social standing can have long-lasting effects on your mental, physical, and emotional health. And they were actually very interesting reads. and also very technical. So if you're curious about that and you want to dive down that rabbit hole, the links of those studies and those journal articles will be in the show notes. With this biological need to belong, you can make certain decisions to fit into a specific group in order to feel included, accepted, and valued. Think of the traditions or rituals that your family has or that you may find unusual. With this biological need to belong, you can make certain decisions to fit into a specific group in order to feel included, accepted, and valued. Think about the traditions or rituals that your family has that you or others outside of that circle might find unusual. Just like in your nuclear family, there are traditions and rituals in the classical music industry that continue not because we love them, but because, quote, that's just how it's always been done. I honestly have yet to meet another musician who loves the orchestral audition process, the college professorship interview process, the fact that ensembles were only 1 credit each, but took the most time of your schedule in music school. And the list really could go on of things that are just the way that they are, but we're not a fan of. And while some of these can range from just inconvenient to extremely problematic, there are systemic barriers that maintain a certain traditional path that musicians must take in order to develop a specific version of a successful music career. Classical music career paths have been shaped for many decades in the way that side rails keep the bowling ball from entering the gutter on its way to the pins. The belief that if you walk the very specific path, get the very specific jobs, then you'll be guaranteed to get that specific career that you think that you've always wanted. I know I myself wanted to walk that path for a really long time. I thought that getting the right college degrees, studying with the right teachers, applying for the right festivals and competitions, and taking every audition I possibly could would land me my dream job. And the trade-off? Well, I was doing all the same things that everyone else was doing in the same ways for the same reasons. I was miserable. I was exhausted. I was burned out and I was working myself to the bone. And I literally had no social life or really any kind of life outside of practicing and showing up for my jobs. I crafted what I thought was the perfect version of professional Nathalie, but at the cost of sharing my outside experiences, interests, and opinions for fear of walking outside of that safe zone. That version of myself didn't include my love of my culture, baking cakes, my fur babies, dancing, and quirky puns. But that was the version that landed jobs, got referrals, and hit the career milestones that I thought I wanted, or at least that's how it looked. This conformity bias is embedded into the classical musician experience. And the cost is a spectrum of musicians who have so much to give and share with the world around them that only they can give. Now, this isn't to say that anyone who has or chooses to walk the traditional path in classical music is wrong. And it's not to say that those who choose to deviate are better than they are. But what ends up happening is that instead of an environment that encourages creativity, you end up in an environment that sees uniqueness and creativity as a rejection of the status quo. Think about the audition rounds you didn't advance through because you didn't play the excerpts exactly the way they were expected to be played. Think about the times musicians have been labeled difficult to work with, the pieces you avoid programming so you don't seem too contemporary, the pieces you avoid programming so you don't seem too antiquated, the recordings of your playing that you never post online for fear of being scrutinized, and the skills that you avoid building up because that's not what's considered a part of that traditional career path. The truth is that even an industry that functions on creativity and artistry has safeguards in place that often rewards sameness and following the pre-established rules. So, are being yourself and being a successful career musician just two opposing goals that you have to choose between? Not at all. In fact, taking the time to learn more about yourself as a person can help you recognize how to find a sense of belonging that also aligns with your personal values. There are more and more examples of musicians showing up in professional spaces as their truest, most unapologetic self. You can literally go to Instagram and just see so many examples of musicians who embrace their funky hair color, their tattoos, their love of video games, who advocate for representation of their culture, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and the list can go on. The more that you embrace who you are beyond your instrument, the more creative and authentic classical music can become. It may not always be easy to show up in a way that's different than you've been taught to do, but you're worth the consistent work it takes to nurture a professional version of yourself that includes elements that make you inherently you. So, we're going to go through 5 steps to create that space for you to not just survive, but thrive as a classical musician and a human being. Step 1, spend time with yourself. I know it seems kind of obvious and like, well, you're with yourself all the time. But how often do you really sit with yourself and really try to understand yourself? What are your core values? Those things that you can't live without, that feel as much a part of you as breathing? For me, honesty, integrity, and communication are some of my core values. The things that I feel make me me. I would feel like a shell without those values. If you're not sure what you value most, then ask the people who know you best. Use reflection or journaling prompts and genuinely take the time to sit with yourself and get to know yourself better. Step 2, incorporate your core values into your professional routines. Are there ways you can practice your core values or embody those values when you're in professional spaces? For example, since communication is one of my core values, I try to find ways to have conversations with people and get to know them better. This also has motivated me to improve my communication skills and try my best to make others feel seen, validated, and heard. Step 3, find others who share similar values. Connection goes beyond your instrument and musical taste. So get to know your colleagues and peers on a personal level to find common values and interests outside of music. Yes, music brought you together, but you can build bonds that will last long after that gig or performance cycle ends. Also, find ways to surround yourself with people who truly accept you as a whole and who want to be in your corner cheering you on. Step 4, know when to walk away. Are there gigs that you still take or people you continue to work with, even though it's really challenging? Now, sometimes completely turning down work isn't always an option, but there are ways to distance yourself or assert boundaries so that you don't feel like you have to make yourself smaller in order to survive in these situations. There have been plenty of times where I have felt incompatible with people or jobs and where I've really dreaded having to show up. But I've taken the time to sit with myself and really understand what I'm really willing to endure and put myself through. I would practice what to say or do in certain situations so that when it came right down to it, I was able to stick to my values and feel like I stayed true to myself, even if sometimes conflict in the workplace was unavoidable. And the last step, step 5, put your authentic self out there. People will only get to know the version of you that you let them. And I know it's so much easier said than done. But as someone who used to keep myself in a box, I know that it's so much better to be yourself than to be a version of yourself that has been predetermined for you. So let's break down the nuggets of knowledge in this episode. Basic human nature feeds your desire to stick to the more traditional music career paths, even when it feels like you're presenting a curated version of yourself. Trying to fit into a certain mold in professional spaces can prevent you from finding opportunities that will benefit from you showing up authentically. You can be your true self and still be considered polished and professional. The more you learn to accept and embrace yourself as you are, the more you'll find others who want creativity and artistry to grow in the classical music industry. And lastly, regardless of which career path you choose, showing up for yourself outside of musicianship can lead to thriving as an individual and also as the career musician you've worked so hard to become. And if you're wondering what embracing authenticity can do for you, I'll tell you what it's done for me. Before I dared to let my personal and professional lives connect, I was constantly worried about saying or doing the wrong things. I felt like none of my work was guaranteed and that I constantly had to prove my value as the musician that I thought they wanted me to be. And now, after years and years of practice, I share the dog pics. I bring flute hats for my fellow fluties at the gigs that I do. I bake mini bundt cakes to start conversations with new and old colleagues. And I also get to work with some pretty amazing people and get to know them and what they bring and what I can learn from them. One of those people in particular is the amazing Catherine, my co-host. It was her birthday as of recording this episode this week, and she's just a really awesome person. So I wanted to give her a little shout out today. She's going to be on the next episode, which is going to be really exciting. And I'm just really grateful to be able to meet musicians every day who are out there just trying to put good into the world. So my hope for you is that you can find ways to show up and be your truest self so that other people can learn from you and appreciate the person you are beyond the musician. That's all for today's episode on The Limitless Musician. If you liked this episode, follow us on Instagram at The Limitless Musician to tell us what you want to hear next. Remember to subscribe to our newsletter to get exclusive content that won't show up anywhere else by clicking the link in the show notes. Until next time.